Now, your methodology. As I said, all methods, methodology, methods, same thing. What you have to do is state very clearly what you've done, okay? You've done the research, you're reporting on it now, so you say what you've done. You should begin with a simple research question. What's a research question? It's a simple question. So, in my Turkish thing, did Ataturk say the sentence in question? If he didn't, why is it on monuments all over the world? Okay, there are actually two parts to the question, but yeah, you can see it's the one thing I'm going to study. The other one, that's for the needs analysis survey. Question is, what do language students think about translation? And that's it. That's your research question. It should be as simple as possible and as clear as possible to the reader who's not a specialist. And that should be the first thing in your methodology chapter. This is what we're going to do. You said why, because it's not in the, it's not been done by anybody else, or it's not been done in the same way by anybody else. Then, literature people don't do this, okay? But people in anything like a science should do it. They don't do it enough. You should state a simple hypothesis. The hypothesis is a simple affirmative statement that is going to be tested. It should not have any modalities. You can't say must. This sentence should have been a mistranslation, might have been. No, it's a simple affirmative statement, and it must be testable. It relates variables. Okay, so the sentence is there, that's not a variable. Mistranslation is opposed to translation, so that's a variable. There are various degrees of mistranslating, and then there's nationalities over here. That's another variable. So this hypothesis is relating those two variables. All right. And here, language students report more satisfaction than their instructors do. This is interesting because it happens all the time. We do questionnaires. Do you like translation activities? The teachers, the instructors, Dan, you're not supposed to use them because we do immersion, communicative, whatever. And the language students say, oh, yeah, it was fun doing the translation. Right. But anyway, the hypothesis is a hypothesis because you don't know if it's true. I think it can be true in some state, in some classes, in some situations, but the hypothesis doesn't even have to be true. If you do your research and you find that the mistranslation was by somebody in Turkey, that's fine. That's a good result. You know, my hypothesis is refuted. It doesn't hold, but I find knowledge. That's good. And if I find that this is not true, that's also a good result. Why do these particular teachers like translation? If I do this research in China, I'll find that the teachers probably like translation more than the students because they've been using that method for about 100 years. Okay. All right. So a hypothesis doesn't have to be true. It just has to be clear and interesting. And by the way, testable. Then your instruments state if you're using a particular model or theory. I don't know, I'm doing a feminist reading. What does that imply? What concepts are involved in the feminist reading? Or I'm doing a Marxist reading and I'm looking at the economics of the text, or anything, or I'm doing an emotional analysis of the emotions in the text. Okay. Say what you're doing. I'm reading, I'm comparing, I'm counting, I'm talking to the people, I'm doing interviews, I'm asking questions, I'm doing a questionnaire survey, whatever, okay? Or I'm doing a bibliographic study, going through everything that's been done and analyzing that. That's an instrument as well. That's a method of getting knowledge, okay? Getting data, at least. I don't know if it's knowledge, but getting data. And then at the lower level, state exactly what you're doing. what kinds of questions you're asking people in the interviews, in questionnaires, or inventories of bibliographic material or whatever. Okay. If you do interviews, I just note that there's a trend towards semi-structured interviews. This means you might have 5 questions you want to ask people, and you make sure you ask them, but then you allow the discussion to go wherever the person, the interviewee, wants to take it. So you let that person say whatever's going through their mind and what they want to talk about, even though you have that structure there, and you must bring them back to those questions that you have. And then you say, when you get the results, that is the data, you've collected the data, the numbers or the statements or whatever. It can be quantitative if there are numbers, or qualitative if it's textual material like interview material or citations from the novel or what people say, what critics say. Okay. Just say how you're going to process them. I shouldn't say measure. Measure implies quantity, but process them, convert them so that they will address your hypothesis. All right. A lot of the research we do these days is mixed method. That is, they have quantitative, for example, from a survey, a questionnaire, and then qualitative from interview data. And we'll look at both of them, see if they say the same thing, and then try to triangulate the result instead of depending entirely on one kind of data or entirely on the other. Okay. That's it. I'll come back for the results in a minute.